Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Hey, welcome back to Keep What You Earn. Today on the show, I'm really excited to welcome back Katherine Studley. Now, Katherine is a tax accountant. She's a content creator, and she's the founder of The Only Consultant and Prisma Tax. She helps provide essential tax and bookkeeping services to content creators and folks in the spicy industries. Think like strippers, adult entertainment, OnlyFans, and even more. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss how she got her start, why she chose this industry, and why stripping away judgment is the recipe for a more approachable and empowering accounting industry overall. We dive into a little bit behind the scenes of our own businesses, discuss a little bit of shop and a little bit of what we're seeing right now in terms of how everyone is basically struggling to understand our whole tax system and what we can do about it. So if you feel like you've been through a judgmental tax season, if you feel like you've been talked down to, belittled, or you just feel like your accountant's not speaking plain English to you, then this is the episode for you. So let's dive in. Hey, Katherine, welcome back.
Hello, Shannon. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I had to invite Katherine back. She's amazing. And if you haven't been tuning in to Keep What You Earn for it was over a year ago, definitely, that we chatted, and we're overdue. So I'm happy to have you back. And would you mind just introducing yourself, our judgment-free tax accountant right here, and what it is you do? Because I think it's super interesting.
Yes. So I am Katherine Studley. I'm the founder of The Only Consultant and Prisma Tax Group. And we specialize in judgment-free tax preparation and bookkeeping for OnlyFans models, strippers, and exotic dancers. So I'm working with the spicy industry, mostly young women making a lot of money who don't have a lot of tax acumen, business acumen. And we just give them a safe and judgment-free space to take care of all their business needs. And I feel like I'm working with my friends. It's the best.
I love it. But judgment-free, not only in the profession, because I know that can be tough. I can imagine it's not really easy to find a tax accountant when you're a working stripper or a sex worker or anything like that, anything in the exotic industry. It's like finding a tax accountant's got to be really, really difficult, because it's like all you feel like is judgment. Like you can't admit what you do, or you can't describe it because it just doesn't feel safe, right?
Oh, for sure. And so many clients have also told me that they're getting sexually harassed. As soon as they mention what they do, accountants want to make a deal for no fee and are really kind of greasy. And really depending on where you are too. I mean, we deal with clients all over the United States. So if you're in somewhere rural in the South, this looks completely different. And for sure, the accountants are not familiar with the nuances of how the spicy industry works. Like for strip clubs, you're paying the club every day to work. You're paying tip outs and house fees, things that you have to spend money on in order to earn money. But it's kind of like a gray area because you're monetizing your personal appearance, but you can't write off personal stuff. And you have to get into the nitty gritty of it to be able to take the write off. But it's such an awkward conversation to have with some old school accountants. So that's where we came in.
Yeah, I love that. Because it is nuanced. Every tax situation is nuanced, but I think that especially it can be tough to talk about that stuff because A, safety, B, just it's hard enough to understand any industry that most people are familiar with. I can tell you that no one CPA exam question was about that industry or was about the nuance associated with that. Nobody presented that as a possible client. So both ways, it's well, this is new for us as accountants. Oh, that is interesting. I don't know how that works. And at the same time, I don't expect them to understand taxes and all the things that go along with that, because that's really tricky. It's tough for any entrepreneur, any business owner of any variety in any industry. So having that, it's got to be this big stalemate of communication between accountants and these folks who are just underserved. But then at the same time, it's there's a huge opportunity there for accountants to serve them. And all it takes is that approachability, I think, that you bring.
Yeah, for sure. And the client's in the position to really set themselves up for long-term success if they can stay up on their taxes and, contribute to retirement plans and get ahead on things. Like, it can really be a very advantageous window of your life if planned strategically with professionals that you trust.
Yes. And we were just talking when we were catching up about how you started offering these free calls for your clients, and that they turn into like trauma dumping sessions, which, like, by the way, same. Like, every time we hop on a call and it's just us, it's like, okay, let me tell you what's going on. And it's a dump of all this stuff. But, like, could you just share, and obviously not sharing people's trauma, but can you share your experience with these calls, what you're learning, and help people understand, like, you're not alone in this? Because I think so many people are afraid to admit this stuff, thinking they're the only ones who have fucked up taxes or are behind, like, so far from the truth.
Oh, almost every person that calls me, the first, like, at least 2 minutes and 30 seconds is just like one breath of, like, they're just confusion and frustration, and they don't know what document is what, and they don't get a 1099, and they have only one bank account. They don't know if they need an LLC, and they're behind 2 years. Like, it's just like complete anxiety and stress. I feel like I just literally say, hello, this is Katherine calling about your taxes. And then it just is, just like an offloading of stress and anxiety. But when you have 10 calls a day, I'm like, this has happened twice this hour. And you think you're the only person in the world that has this problem. But I can validate and verify that almost everyone that starts earning self-employment income feels like this, at least in the beginning, before you get the systems in place.
How many people tell you, I'm probably the biggest mess you've ever seen?
Oh, yeah, multiple a week. And I'm like, I mean this so sincerely. I'm going to hold your hand. You are not special. This is how a lot of people feel.
Like, you are not special. Everybody is doing this. Just no one's talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's taboo to share, right? Because you're not supposed to talk about money, definitely not supposed to talk about taxes. So you never even know that your friends are probably feeling the same way, because it's just something that's never discussed.
Yeah, there's just so much fear around it too, admitting how much you make and like what goes along with that, and then finding out how much taxes you owe. One thing I've noticed working with clients is, and this was an evolution I really took over years, was that people came in looking for a solution to the tax bill. Like, I always owe so much in taxes, and they were afraid of the amount. And it turns out that actually a lot of what I found is it was really they were afraid of the uncertainty of not knowing what they owed and in not understanding how to predict that or how it actually worked. And then working with us, even though they owed maybe more taxes because they made more money, owed more in taxes dollar-wise 1 year over the other working with us, they still claim, like, Shannon, it's a totally different environment working with you because you took the surprise out of it. And now it's actually not stressful at all. The surprise is 80%, 90% of the stress. The amount is the other part of it when you can't plan for it. Is that what you're finding with your clients too, is just the stress associated with it and less about the actual dollars?
Agree. And the delivery, like traditional CPA firms, they just send you your return like, well, you owe $100K, you got two options, pay online or mail it in. I have an ounce of empathy for people. Like, I understand that this is a huge shock. I mean, I have clients that are making tons of money. The internet is unlimited as far as adult content goes. So 23-year-old girls are owing 500 grand, which they have saved because they're scared about it. But it's just like, they don't even know, are you taxed on your gross? Are you taxed on your profit? What about what I paid my manager? So I think just like being a human and like meeting people as a person, like I'm talking to you right now, goes so far. And that's how I would want to be treated. So that's how I treat other people.
That's another thing too I notice with accountants too, is it's like they want the respect of the client and they want things done their way, and they want the client to not bother them outside hours or whatever. And like they limit their availability and they do all these blocks. They draw up boundaries. But what I find that actually does is, although it's quite healthy for people to draw boundaries, I also see it as adding more resistance to somebody actually trying to get in and talk to you. And I found when I cut that wall down, like what you did with the phone calls, like when I started making myself even more available and just said, move the work over there, but make me available to be able to talk to people, that really cuts down and disarms everything. And I think people don't appreciate that enough.
I totally agree. So usually in the past, we would, for a one-time tax preparation, a call would be a separate cost. And a lot of times people would book separately. It's just how we structure things. People want things to be affordable. And that's how you have to keep prices affordable, right? It's to not include a call. But I really spent a lot of time simmering in this over the last year. And I raised our price a little bit and I baked in a free 10-minute call at the top of, and it's optional. You can take it or not. It's here. Use it anytime throughout the course of your tax preparation. If you need it up front because you're totally confused about taxes, let's chat. If you understand the expenses, but you want to talk about the results and how to mitigate this in the future, let's meet at the end and talk about an action plan. And then I started doing free discovery calls as well, which I actually outsourced. I mean, not outsourced. I hired my best friend who works at Disney World. So he's really good at customer service. So he's at the front end as well, for free discovery calls. I think just being a little more heavy in the customer service goes a long way.
Yeah, that relationship really matters. And like, I always say that we see them financially naked. So, which is funny because what you do. So it's like we always say, we see you financially naked. You might as well trust us with that we're not going to sell the photos to TMZ. It's like, we want to be your trusted person who's going to safeguard that information and protect it and protect you. And that's important. And when you have that relationship, most accountants see it as transactional, and I see it as relational. And I'm like, they're welcoming you in and like they're stripping themselves naked to show you like, this is my money. That is very vulnerable. And if you don't respect that, it's a very tough situation. So let me just go back to this. You hired your friend from Disney. I've had this kick lately where I've been like hiring non-accountants, inspired slightly by you because I know your team is like everything but accountants.
We're a little diverse.
I know, very diverse, which I want to touch on if no one heard this story already. But we were hiring a customer success manager and I was like, I want legit hospitality. I want like you worked at Disney. I want somebody who has a hospitality mindset. And I'm like, I can teach you the jargon and the 1099 and the crap over there. That's easy, but I can't teach customer service as well as I can teach forms and all that other stuff. Like, do you agree? It's a skill that is just so essential.
110%. 110%. And even like myself, like I only have so much bandwidth. I only have so much patience. I can myself only handle so much correspondence between my team, my clients, but hiring who's 15 years of customer service experience and in hospitality, literally like classically professionally trained. So he doesn't even have to think twice about all these things that he's learned from corporate America on, you know, how to communicate with people and pause and think and have patience. And same thing. I made him a one-pager front and back about the basic. It's not a consultation. It's a discovery call. It's not heavy hitting. It's just a general outline. Here's our services. You need to track your expenses. And I hear you. I see you. I validate you. So I'm thinking about kind of how we can utilize him more as far as like a concierge. Like that could be an additional thing. Like, you know, a lot of clients, I worked at a place 2 years ago. I can't find my W-2. It's not in my IRS portal. Like maybe we could take the extra step and call places for them.
Or pull the transcript or whatever. But like having that as like an intake system of like, yeah, we can help you with that, but here's your person you're going to interface with on that process.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that we're kind of like scheming about and like potentially going to build out. But yeah, I highly recommend getting a little customer service support because technical accountants are good at being technical accountants, and that has its own separate value, but being customer service facing is valuable as well.
I have found that too, even with my team I have, which are amazing, like their zone of genius is 100% in the accounting and the technical. And what I realized was, although they are great at customer service, like they're good at customer service, like they do what they need to do and they value the customer relationships we have. I was like, what if I had someone come in with a pure customer service passion? Look at what we do with a different lens, up level it, and train them on how to be better at it as well. So it's going to be this whole environmental shift where I actually reshifted our entire mantra that like we're actually a hospitality business that happens to do CFO services. Like we happen to offer this product, but we model this after like a restaurant or an airline or other things where I say like we're basically a boutique restaurant with 8 tables that have constant sequenced service of who's coming to your table, what they're doing, and making sure you're never missing a water glass full of water. And that's our whole idea, is keep the water glass full, never let people wait with an unresponded question, things like that. Like what are ways that you're doing some of that in your practice to keep people engaged and to keep them feel like they're trusting you, especially in this relationship that's so tough to handle with a lot of fear and baggage coming in?
Yeah. So we use Soraban for our like client intake as far as like our organizer goes. There's a chat function and there's a few of us that are in the chat. So the accountant's in the chat, the front end customer representatives in the chat, and I'm in the chat. So it's a holistic customer service experience, and we jump in when we need to, and we only tap in, we tag the accountant in it only during the time of tax preparation, and then it kicks back to the front end. So we're splitting the client communication. Client knows exactly who's dealing with there's no one like in the shadows, right? It's like now I'm here. Here's the three of us. They're going to be talking to us. And if I need to intervene, if I can sense that someone's about to go off the rails or like, get really upset, I can quickly jump in. So nothing has to get escalated. Like there's someone in the chats all the time looking at them, and we try to respond to people. I mean, almost instantly, but for sure within like 4 to 6 hours. And our people are emailing us all hours because they're nocturnal. So.
Yeah. Same thing. We do a 4 business hour turnaround time. I mean, we don't guarantee that in our contracts, but that's kind of our internal, like, I used to work at McDonald's and they had this thing like 2 minutes from like order to driving out the drive-through. And if you didn't meet that time, it was like a gap that we had to close. Like, why didn't we meet our times? Why didn't we do this? So we're doing something like that kind of internally with a KPI on we need a 4 business hour turnaround. And if we don't meet that, or if a customer has to come back and follow up and say like, hey, I didn't get an answer to my question, I'm like, that's a fail. Like, that's a miss. They shouldn't have to raise their hand and ask for more water. Like, and say, hey, I need another drink. We should be on top of that stuff and monitoring it for the level of service we provide. So I love that you do that too, because it's more proactive. And what drives me nuts about most accountants and working for them, which like you and I both, it's like we started our own stuff because we were like, that's stupid, there's a better way. And by looking at what they do, they just respond reactively to the squeaky wheels. How are you managing? I'm just curious because first of all, not only are you a tax accountant, you're a business owner. So this is interesting too, from the standpoint of managing all this stuff. How are you kind of triaging all of that? Like when, like the louder people versus, the attention you're giving, like how are you managing that chat or managing that intake in a way that's like prioritizing it effectively?
So first of all, we have on our website what our expectations are, what you can expect from us and what we expect from you. So, and sex workers do very well with boundaries just due to the nature of the work. So that's kind of unique, I guess, but people in general have their own boundaries. So I just am very upfront, like, here's what we expect from you. Here's what you can expect from us. Here's when things might not work out between us. So already from the top, the expectation is set. So people kind of know what's going on. As far as how do I prioritize, like which clients to respond to?
Or like, how do you avoid one squeaky wheel taking all your attention away?
So we're a volume-based business. We have clients that are working with us on a monthly subscription. We're doing their bookkeeping, their payroll, their S Corps, the whole 9. But then the second part of this is just like a flash of 1040s, which is very difficult to manage. A lot of accountants want to stay away from 1040s, right? Because it's a lot of back and forth. So it's, we're on a journey. But this year we're throttling our client intake. So we have an RSVP list. You come in on the RSVP list, you pay a $100 deposit that guarantees you as a client. You get into our chats, we review everything, go back and forth with you, and then we quote you for the full price of the 1040. And once that is paid, your return will be done in about a week. But if you don't have your stuff to us by March 25th, extension. And then we basically have like chunks and wait lists for the extension. So we're only consistently working on the amount of work that we can handle instead of, in the past, rookie mistakes, some things you just have to learn. I go viral on TikTok, right? And get a bunch of leads. We take them all in. And then it's like, it's unmanageable. I'm not setting up anyone for success. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to me because this is my business. So for my mental health and trickle down for everyone else, we're just going in digestible chunks and giving people information about an extension. It's not the end of the world. You need to make a payment. Doesn't mean you're going to get audited. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. This means that we're going to revisit this on May 1st, and we can still get this wrapped up in a very reasonable time frame.
Let's touch on that for a second. The stigma of extension, which like I love extensions in the sense that I like to proactively extend so that we just lower our heart rates, everybody. And then we just work on the getting you close enough to be being able to tell you an amount to pay. Everything will be done by May 31st. We only have 12 clients, by the way. So like easy peasy. Like you could probably do that shit in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not completely secure, like we're waiting for another K1, we're waiting for another thing, we go, okay, close enough is close enough. This is what we know. This is what we tell you to pay. But we tell it like February, March. Like all our business clients know right now that like this is what you're going to owe. And then from the individual side, same thing. It's like all the pass-throughs. This is what you're going to owe. And then now they know. And I say, you have another month and a half to get ready for that. Do what you got to do. And we're going to extend it. Pay what you can. But let's talk about this. If you can't file on time or you can't pay on time because of the amount, like, can we talk about the options? And yeah, it sucks, but it's not as big a deal as people make it. Hey there, are you on LinkedIn? I love connecting with listeners and other professionals and business owners on that platform. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. So if we're not already connected, make sure you send me a connection request after this episode.
Yeah, if you at least file an extension, then you can avoid the failure to file penalty, right? There's two: failure to file, failure to pay. So that's one very simple thing you can do to at least give yourself 6 months to get the tax return together. And if you don't have the funds to pay what the estimated tax payment should be, pay what you can and pay the state first. That's pretty much like the moral of the story that I tell everyone.
Why pay the state first?
Those states are so petty. They will come right for you. The IRS may have some mercy on your soul, but states, oof, they will come for you.
I always joke the FTB in California is what the people think the IRS is.
Yeah, that is actually true.
Yeah.
I would say that in my experience, I've seen California be the most aggressive.
Yeah.
I think, who else? I mean, New York's pretty bad too. Lots of notices too. I mean, it's not just one. It's like boom, 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 which is like very stressful in itself just to even get that kind of correspondence. But if you're listening to this, pay the state.
Yeah, pay your states first. I love that because I always say the same thing where I'm just like, well, they're the ones who are going to like chase you harder. And then the IRS will take until June to realize you exist. So don't worry. Like they're so behind that like they won't even know you didn't file until like the summer, and then you can catch up your payments by then and you'll be fine. But yes, you'll still get like some interest and penalties for paying late, but like people think that it's this end all be all or nothing. And I'm going, no, pay what you can. And then people don't realize this, guys. If you're under 50K owed at a given point in time in total, you basically get pre-approved for a payment plan. Like you can go online and sign up for a payment plan to pay the rest off over 72 months. Now you still have to pay interest and stuff, but they'll stop chasing you and they know you're on a plan and it's all part of the plan and you can pay it off early. So it's just kind of like setting you up with the plan of how you're going to handle it as opposed to just going, oh my God, I have to keep this all to myself and I can't file anything yet. And it's like, there's a way. They make it easier for them to get paid. They don't want you to hide. That's the last thing they want, right? They want you to actually show up and say, here's what I can do. Tell me what I can do to fix this.
Exactly. And you're not going to jail if you don't file your taxes. You're not going to jail if you're a couple of years behind on taxes. That's not what happens. Okay, tax evasion, tax fraud, that's something different. But so many clients call me and they're like, I don't want to go to jail. I'm like, I don't think you're going to. Like, you're just a year behind. Like, I think it's fine.
Yeah. You have to understand too, they have to zoom out for a second. And I think that what people don't do is sit and think about it for a minute on how it actually works, like macro level, like zoom out and realize that like they're trying to collect money based on the fair and legal taxation of the system. Like the tax laws are what they are and they're just enforcing them. So if you're not paying willingly, that's different than not paying because you don't know or because you don't know, like you're just like behind on stuff. Like if you're actively avoiding, it's more like if you lost something versus you stole it. It's different. It's totally different. And you have to approach it with this mindset of like, they're just doing their jobs. Side note, IRS agents are like some of the nicest people. I don't know, like I call the IRS like weekly and I'm always talking to like the sweetest person.
Yeah, I agree. It's just a long wait time, but it's a person on the other end. We're all just people. They're just trying to get through their work as well. Like,
yeah. And they want to work with you. And they have been known to like help us out a little bit. You know, it's just like, I can't tell you that, but if I were to tell you it, I could send the client a letter and help them do this. It's like, wink, wink. And it's like, they really want to work with you because they want to collect the money. They don't want to hassle you. They're not there to bully you. They're there to actually just get the work done as quickly as possible and work with you, not against you. And I think that people assume that it's this like evil entity. And I'm like, no, they're actually really helpful. They're just doing the work that the laws tell them they have to go do.
Yep, exactly. And kind of on that page is like notices. Notices happen. It doesn't mean you're going to jail. They're not going to garnish your wages. Eventually they will. But I mean, if you have any confusion on one of notices, you can always just call the number on it. Literally just call the number on the notice and they will give you information on it. A lot of times there's a clear path forward and they just want to see a bank statement or see proof of a credit. It's not always like a huge, big, scary thing, but getting mail from the IRS is scary. But if you just read it, take a breath, look at every page, look at all pages. And many times if you call the IRS, you can resolve it on your own or at least get clarity.
Yeah. And that's the big thing is we've actually had, I don't know if I told you the story, but we actually asked somebody, they said, I got an IRS letter, what do you want me to do? And I said, take a picture of it and upload it to Slack so I can see it. You know what they did? Took a picture of the damn closed envelope.
People panic.
I know, but I was like, so what did you think I was going to do with this information, right? I was just like, what do you think I'm doing? So it's more about, okay, open it, read it. And a lot of people will say, Shannon, what does this say? Because we all forget English for a little bit. Now, admittedly, the IRS letters are not written in plain freaking English most of the time. It's in this old courier text.
Yeah, it is a little daunting.
It's a little daunting, but it's like, honestly, you have to picture some intern sent this, understand? And they ran these numbers and they're sending these out in droves and mistakes happen. They have mistakes in them all the time. I found mistakes where I call them up and go, your math is wrong. And you transpose a number on your notice. They're wrong sometimes. And I think the more you can just look at it with a skeptical eye and just go, okay, they're sending me this and I have the right to respond to it. I don't have to just do what it says. That's the biggest thing I think people need to hear is that you can appeal, you can question, you can ask, you can call the number, or you can have one of us call the number. We do that. Certain accountants will do that for you. And it's really not that big a deal because most of the time it's just them trying to clarify something.
Yep, exactly. It's not a reason to panic. And also you can log into your IRS account, log into your IRS portal. There's sometimes clarity in there too. And make sure the IRS has your most recent mailing address. Otherwise, you could be missing correspondence. So it's good to just kind of log into the portal and see what's going on. It's presented like a hair less scary, I guess, because it's on the computer and not in a scary mail.
I know, yeah. But it's also even people who are afraid to probably log into their own IRS account or create one for no other reason than just the stigma associated with it too. The biggest thing is just understanding that when you understand a little bit more how it works, it becomes less scary. Because everything's scary. Everything you don't know is scary. Every new piece of information, every new college class I took, every new career move I made, every first day at a job, fucking scary. Because I didn't know what I was doing. And you just go, I don't know how to approach this. I'm insecure, all of that. But what cures that? Action. What cures that? Asking questions. And this is no different, right?
Totally agree. One small step.
Yeah. And I love that you specifically serve this community. It's something that always fascinated me about your business because A, you niche down really well. B, it was no one else is doing that. And that also made me think two things. One is no one else is doing that because, why aren't they? Because what a great industry to be in. B, also it's an interesting thing for the clients to see that you're niching down there because it's a comfortable place where it's oh, she works with people like me. And to distill that fear down into it's not a big deal. You're one of my many clients. We all have this problem. What are some of the other patterns you see though with the clients that you work with of struggles they have or challenges other than what we've already talked about?
So with exotic dancers, and this is all stuff I learned just by taking free calls from people that found me on TikTok. I initially started this in 2020 when I came across OnlyFans and I said, oh my God, everyone's going to get a 1099. They're not going to know how to do their taxes. I thought it was going to be just content creators. I'd only worked professionally in accounting firms for 2.5 years. So I'm not a tax expert at this point in 2020. But then other people under the sex work umbrella found me. So exotic dancers, for example, do not get a 1099 many times from their clubs because clubs don't really care about their reporting requirements. Every state is different. Every club is different.
Oh, what? They're not fully compliant with all the standards? Come on.
Exactly. So many clients call me panicked because they have no tracking. They were not issued a 1099 and other accountants don't even understand how a strip club even works to help them with it. Sugar babies is another one. In the industry, all the income that they're getting is called a gift. I'm getting a gift from my sugar daddy. Well, actually, it's taxable income. But in order to determine if it's actually a gift or taxable income, we have to have a very honest and open conversation. So those are kind of like the unique issues that we're seeing. And then, of course, like the nuances and expenses for creators. It depends on your niche. If you're making cowgirl content, then your cowgirl hat's a write-off and all of the supplies associated with that. Some girls are eating on camera. They're consuming food on camera. So the food that they're eating because of the niche is actually treated as a supply and not as a meal, which has a different tax treatment. But it takes a level of trust with clients. And I built that. It took a while. Like when I first, it's not like I was like, hey, hot girls, like I want to do your taxes, and everyone just flocked. Like people were very skeptical of me. No one trusted me. I had to really like earn all the respect that I have by networking with people and going to these events and getting lap dances and going to the dungeon and the works. Like I've done my time to get the respect to be here.
I love it. And it's important though. And I think it's justified because I imagine that's not a very trustworthy industry because of how they've been treated as well. So that makes perfect sense.
Yep, for sure. Which I didn't even know what sex work was. I had no idea that this was even like an issue. And then every time someone would call me, they would say, there's a banking discrimination issues. This is another huge one that no one really knows about. So if you read the fine print of any bank account in the United States, it says nothing adult industry related, no porn, nothing. So just depending on the bank you're at, one random day, they could just shut you down because they're seeing the OnlyFans deposit go in. And now you're late on your mortgage and you're behind on everything else. So that's something else that we've seen, which is not 100% unique to this industry. I think others as well, like cannabis, I know has issues too. But yeah, that's been very, very tough to see.
Yeah, you don't think about that as much, right? Like the banking issues, all that other stuff. It's like, it's hard enough, let alone now I have to deal with taxes. And it's so exciting that like people like you, Kat, are in those industries and helping serve them and making it more approachable. That's why I've always related to you, because that's what we try to do with this show and what I try to do all the time with business owners. And I'm like, yes, judgment free, because that's all people feel when they walk into an accountant's office, is this immediate judgment of like, tell me what I should have done differently. Like your parents scolding you, like, tell me what I should have known and why I should have done this better. And it's always coming from a place of like coaching with us versus a place of like, I don't know, reprimand.
For sure. But I have felt that myself. I mean, listen, I was not a thriving accounting student. Okay. I was like crying all the time. I was like, this cannot be my life. Like, how did I choose this? And then I started working in firms and I was like, oh my God, this is worse. Like, I don't like, I think I made a wrong turn. So I'm very like empathetic to people being overwhelmed and like super confused by this. Cause I'm like, yo, I figured it out. I can tell you in a way that I can explain it to you. Like, I know why you can't understand this and why you're afraid of it. Like, I get it. Like, I have also been victimized by accounting.
Same. And I was like, I was decently good at accounting, but I was like, why are you guys overcomplicating this with all these words? Like, just call it this. It's it. Like, make it approachable and easy to understand for the business owner. And I actually challenge my team on this too, where I go, can you turn that question into a client question? Because there will be all these questions that come up that's just like, hey, why was this depreciated as this type of asset? And I'm like, try again.
Yeah. Say it in like a conversational way.
Yeah. And I said, what's the core question? So for example, like we have all these transactions come in on the bookkeeping, right? And the bane of my existence, Venmo and fucking Amazon, right? Amazon comes in QuickBooks and droves, like 83 transactions. And then my team would go like put them into the file that we send to the client saying like, what are these? And I said, well, like, what's the real question here? And the real question is like, what are you buying on Amazon through the business in general? Like, what are we using Amazon for? Can we just make a blanket assumption that it's this type of expense? Because are you using it for the same type of thing, like office supplies or whatever? It turns out they were. And I was like, that just saved you 82 extra questions.
Yeah, which is like people's biggest gripe with bookkeeping is like the last thing you want is 100 questions every month to go through it because And then explaining that to people too, right? Like, well, I thought you were doing my bookkeeping. Why do you have to ask me all these questions? Like, well, we need clarity on them unless you're asking the right questions at the top, which we've also refined.
Exactly. Asking the right questions, but understanding the story, understanding the business, not just from reacting to what you're seeing in the transactions, but asking proactive questions is big. Like, tell me more about what you do. Explain it to me. How do you make money? You know, what expenses do you have coming out? And asking those right questions too. Like, I can't tell you how much just asking the right questions at the right time and just being relentlessly curious about what's going on pays off for everybody, because asking those right questions and not waiting until you see something to find that out, like as much as you can do, ask why, keep asking why, because you're going to find all of those gemstones underneath that.
I agree. And we've kind of gone through an evolution of how we onboard people and what works best. And I have found that just a general conversation, not even so much like we have an internal checklist, right? Like I know what questions I have to ask, but I'm not going down the list line by line. It's a little bit more fluid. And at the end, like I got out of it what I needed to know. Hopefully you have some more reassurance about how this is going to work, but it wasn't so like rigid, I guess.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. We actually leaned into, when we first started the company, we leaned into the rigidity and said, let's create like a rigid structure that we can work in so that there's boundaries and everything's clear and all this stuff. And everything was standardized so that we could accommodate volume. And we said, okay, everybody does this and does this and does this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then we leaned away from doing the volume, but we kept the rigidity of the structure. And surprisingly, I'm not going to say it worked. Surprisingly, what ended up happening was we had the worst of both worlds. We were doing low volume, but then we were like less relationship because it was all through the standard templated, automated stuff that we were still doing. And we lost all of the nuance. We lost all of the extra like customization. And I said, you know what? F that. Throw away the automations. It's easier for us, not them. And we have to start making it easier for them first before we make it easier for us. Like we need to make a process that is easy for them and then we can work on us. But that was not easier for them. That was solely out of convenience for me. Like when we had a team member quit, I was like, we should send an email to all the clients just explaining what's going on and why the things are going to be a little delayed. My operations manager was like, I'm going to start working on a blanket email that we can send out. And I'm like, cool. Then I went, wait a minute. No, hold that thought. And I picked up the phone and I called every client individually and explained uniquely how it was going to impact them, and then reaffirmed the 2 or 3 things that we were going to work on that were high impact and the things that might be delayed on every single one. I left that going, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And calling people goes a long way. But we're kind of still balancing this, to be honest, because we are a volume game.
Yeah, you have to be careful with the volume game. I think the chat is the high touch element that you need that people don't have. And you have to be clear about what the expectations are. I agree. But I think that when the time is right and the service calls for it, like I said, we're just in the polar opposites of the volume versus like, we'll call it like high ticket, low volume. My leaning into it is like, these guys pay me enough that I can call them. There's only 12 of them. I can call them. Now, your version of that might look differently, but I think there's a way to, it doesn't even have to be how you do it. It really is just in the speed, the amount they feel seen and heard in that moment. Like whenever the communication and the proactiveness of it, as opposed to waiting until someone calls you and complains about something being late.
Totally agree. So it is kind of a dance because we have to have processes. That's what accounting is. We have to have checklists. We have to have the processes, but it has to be like still a good experience for clients. But I agree. I have also like, we do have blanket newsletters and emails too. But now we have like more specific blanket things depending on where you are in the lineup, segmented. And then I'll add like a little personal touch. So you know that I'm talking to you, right? Like I saw you in Las Vegas. It was good to see you. Like whatever. So it's still personal, but blanket.
Yeah. And I try to do like the voice notes too. So it's like actually me, like, you know, it's actually me. I actually write all of my emails that go out to my email list. I personally write, and my team is going to kill me. They're like, someone else can write that. AI can write that. I go, no, they fucking can't. No matter how hard we try with AI though, like you would always smell it. I can smell it. They can smell it. And I'm just going, there's something about though, I think I want to be like the last person on earth who writes their own newsletters, because that will be the only thing that like is different. Because actually I got compliments on it when I ran into people in person. They were like, I really like your emails. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I write them. And it's like, they said, you know what's weird? I can tell because it just sounds like you. And I said, yeah, and I want to keep it that way. And that's really, really important. That's the touch, though, where I'm like, I will always write the newsletters, but they will be distributed broadly through the automation. I'm not going to send them all individually. That's the balance. And I think people are losing touch with that. They're trying to find ways to make their life easier through automation at the sacrifice of customer service. And I'm like, that's not the first place you go. You make it easier on the processes and on the internal. Do not try to automate the customer interaction first, is my personal opinion, because they can smell it.
I agree. What I do a lot is Loom videos.
Same.
I love a quick Loom video. In a minute, I can knock out a bunch. I'm talking to you. You know I'm talking to you. Sometimes it's just my face. Sometimes I'm going through your financials. I'm looking at your email, or I'll even reply in a Loom video to an email. Sometimes I'll just hold up the emails like, you know what? I was going to write you an essay, but I just want to just talk it out real quick. And people always appreciate it. They understand way better. It's a personal touch, but it's not a phone call, but I'm like around. It's a good balance.
But you know what's really cool about that you do that? And I do that too, but somebody actually called this out to me. They said it brings in tonality of the approachable factor of it, because when you read an email from an accountant especially about your taxes or about your financials, going back to this, like, you carry a tone with it. Like, you actually hear an angry person, or you'll hear it the way you want to hear it because you're stressed out. So you're hearing it stressed out. And then especially those, like, you know, the accountant, we just said this at the top of the show, like, here you go, you owe this, pay it this way, 2 ways to pay, bullet, 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 because that's what's easy for them. What would be easier is if you could add tonality. If you could say it in a Loom video with even just love the screen with the 2 numbers on there and go, all right, let me explain. You owe this much money mostly because of XYZ that happened. Your W-2 didn't withhold enough. So if you want to change this outcome next year, make sure you're increasing your withholding through a thing called a W-4. Ask your employer to revisit that and work through that with me later this year. We'll figure that out so this doesn't happen again, right? Like, that is the value. And I'm just like, why are people skipping that? They're skipping like the best part, Katherine.
I get it. I know. And I mean, for me, I'm a people person. I want to talk to people. Like, that's what I want to do, like, more so. So I'm happy to chat if I can. But yeah, Loom videos and the chats have been a game changer, I would say. The day I found out what Loom was, I was like, this is the tool of tools. We're going all in on this.
Yeah. 2 verbal processors right here going, can I just talk this through and like not write this down? Because my hands can't capture the words as fast. Like, my brain is frustrated at how slow my fingers move. You too?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, I'd rather just talk, like, and it's just better for everyone. Like, I can knock this out in 32 seconds and we can just be on our way.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes across with my casual tone or my analogies or like my sense of humor too, where I'm just like, okay, look, listen, this is how I would interpret it. Do not freak out. But if I say that in an email, it's like, don't freak out. And it's like, why? What's going on? It has a completely different tone for someone reading it. And I think it's so helpful. I love this. So Kat, what's the best way for people to find out more about working with you? Do you work with other industries too? Because I think you dabble in other stuff too. So just clarify that for those listening.
Listen, guys, we dabble. Okay. Whatever your situation is, we can help you. Okay. If you're looking for a non-traditional judgment-free tax experience, that's us. We work, mostly with the spicy industry, but also with a lot of creatives and solopreneurs, people that are just like not trying to go to H&R Block or an old man CPA firm, basically. So, if you're interested, my website is theonlyconsultant.com. That's the brand. Prismatax.com. That's the tax firm. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram at _only_consultant. And I'm also on LinkedIn and TikTok. So just Google me. You'll see all the socials. Hit me up.
Yes. And don't follow her socials. She's got good information. She gives away such great information on all of the videos. And I know that this is airing in the midst of tax season. Don't be afraid. Extend your shit. Get her to help you. And we'll get you all filed and ready to go with Katherine and her team's help. Katherine, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate any conversation with you because you're such a delight.
Yeah, likewise. This was fun. Thank you.
So when it comes to tax strategy, my philosophy is that I would rather you master your tax plan than implement some crazy strategies you're learning off of TikTok and Instagram. And that's why we use power sessions to dedicate some time with you to create a pro forma tax return. This enables you to predict your tax outcome, to take the surprise out of that surprise tax bill, and to enable you to use your resources better instead of overpaying Uncle Sam. If you're interested in learning more, check the link in the show notes to learn more about our power sessions.